Welcome to How to Sell More. Today, we are talking about the old school selling techniques that not only still work today, but frankly, things that the youngins, the younger generation seem to have never been taught. They've never learned. We're also focused on tech. We're also focused on stacks and automation and AI. We may have forgotten somewhere along the way that these techniques that existed in the 80s and 90s still work today. And I am joined with Jack Daly. Now, as you will hear from this conversation, Jack has decades of sales and executive experience. He started in business as a CPA, but we won't hold that against him, and eventually rose through the ranks to CEO of a bunch of different companies. He's built up 6 companies, turning them into national firms, 2 of which he was able to exit by selling them to Wall Street. Now, I don't want to take any longer. I want to get into the conversation that I had with Jack. But if you are someone who's looking to sharpen your own sales skills, to be able to push your pipeline forward, have better conversations, or manage your sales team to be able to sell more, you are not going to want to miss the conversation that I have with Jack Daly. I'm Mark Drager. Let's get into it. So Jack Daly, you have over 30 years of sales and executive experience, working your way up in an accounting firm and becoming the CEO, and then going on to be the leader of many organizations. What I wanted to talk to you about is, at your age, and I say that with respect, but if I can tell you a quick story, I was talking to my dad a few weeks ago. My dad is turning 70 this year. He was an executive in the insurance field for a long time, but he's been out of the game for almost 20 years now. He retired at 50. And the other day, he was leaning on me. He was nicely pointing out areas in my own marketing, in my own business, that he thought wasn't up to standards. And part of me, as a 40-year-old guy, wanted to say, wow, you've been out of the game for 20 years. You don't, you don't really understand how business is. I wanted to be ageist about it, but honestly, I reflected on it. And every single thing he pointed out was correct. Every single thing that was relevant to him in the 80s and the 90s in terms of business is still relevant today. And I took action on it, and I'm so glad for the push. And so when I was getting ready to sit down with you, I thought, here is a man who has decades of experience. And while we could talk about what's happening in 2023, I'm more curious about the lessons and about the tactics and about the strategies that worked in the 80s, that worked in the 90s, that worked in the noughts, that maybe people my age are ignoring or simply ageist about, but they're still just as important as ever. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I love the way you've teed it up, because I get in front of my audiences and my kids are older than the majority of the salespeople in my audiences. So I'm sensitive to this, and I want to take it out of the audience straight away. And so the question is, hey, is sales different today than it was 20, 30 years ago? And the answer to that question is yes, it is. And no, it isn't.
Okay, you left me hanging. I was like, what? Not it's anywhere both, where I thought we were going.
Both true. Let me show you. 20 years, 30 years ago, people do business with people they trusted. That's the way it was 30 years ago. By the way, I think that's more profound and more the case today than ever, because we've got all these people trolling all over the internet and everything else, masquerading and doing all kinds of things that we didn't have before. And so where is the trust? I mean, I get attacked all day with LinkedIn trolls and all of that type of thing. So selling at the end of the day is about trust. It's a transfer of trust. True today was true before. Here we go again. 20, 30 years ago, people do business with people they like. Is that changed? Because if I don't like you, Mark, I ain't buying from you. I mean, that's pretty simple. And the best salespeople are like chameleons, and they morph into being more like the person they're calling on. You see, people do business with people they like, and they tend to like people that are more like them. So trying to figure out what kind of a personality am I dealing with, and then modifying yours is essential to getting to the finish line. Now, if I pack those two and say, okay, they're the same, well, then what is the difference? And for me, it's one word: technology. Technology in the last 20 years has changed the game of selling in a profound way. And a salesperson that isn't taking advantage of it is really losing out on the opportunity. For example, I can remember as a sales guy 20, 30 years ago, in the trunk of my car were boxes with manila files on each one of my accounts. And there were like written pads of paper like this.
Up until a few years ago, I just threw out literally folders, manila folders with business cards stapled to them with all of the handwritten notes of all of the dead leads, like all of the meetings that just didn't go anywhere. And I looked at these boxes and I thought, what do I do with them? There's just hundreds and hundreds of folders from like 8 years out of date. And we just threw them all out.
Right. Absolutely. Well, in that very busy trunk of the car, I also had demonstration materials of my product. Like I'm going to walk in with 2 big suitcases full of stuff that I can show. My goodness. We don't need to do any of that. There's a website up there. People can go and see what we have, what we do, who we are, how we're different, how we're better, all of those types of things. So the nature of our conversations now as a salesperson has changed dramatically, or I hope they have, because you shouldn't be trying to go in and ask questions about things that you could find out on your own by going to the internet, right? A contact management system and leveraging a contact management system, it just changed the nature of the game. So the nature of a sales call today is so much more about asking questions that really go deep after you've done your homework before you've even made the call. So I was in Phoenix yesterday and I was working with a group of people and I said to them, so how many of you had ever met me before? And no one had. And I said, so how many of you, knowing that you were going to spend 5 hours of your life with me today, how many of you went to my website and checked me out? How many of you went onto my LinkedIn and checked me out? Not a single person. And these were the sales leaders of the company that I was working at. And I said, gang, there's 168 hours in the week. That's math, 24 hours times 7. I protect my 168. I would check out anybody before I arrived and say, is this person going to be worth my time? And if you haven't done it with me, now I'm suspecting you haven't done it with your prospects and your customers. So you're not leveraging the asset that can be leveraged, and that's technology.
But, I don't know if this is true, but I've picked up from many, many conversations over the last, this is painful for me to say, the last 20 years, where it's feature and benefit based selling. And then it's from feature and benefit based selling to outcome based selling. And then from outcome to insight based selling, then insight based selling to story driven selling. And it's like, it seems like I've heard for far too long people of a certain age or generation saying, guys, things have changed. It's not like it was in the old days. And I would look around the room and I was typically one of the younger people there. And I go, this is the new normal for me. Have there been these kind of subtle shifts in terms of how we should even be approaching sales? Or again, is it just we maybe have lost the fact that feature and benefits are still really important today because we're all so busy focusing on our purpose and our stories and our blah, 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 what have you. Have we lost fundamentals along the way?
Yeah, and I'm going to make it real fundamental. And your audience may disconnect here. But piece of advice, quit selling. Just quit it. People showing up and throwing up, putting presentations on, people do not want to be sold. So what is a salesperson to do if they're not going to sell? And the subtle change I ask is this: help them to buy. So you've got to figure out where the pain points are, where the pleasures are, and are you the right fit? It's interesting, Mark. I get tagged by people all over the world saying, come and help me with my company. Here's my challenges. 30% of the leads that come in to hire me that I could close like that, I send to other people that would be better for them with what they need right now. Because if I can do that, when they really need me for my strengths, for my sweet spot, they're not going to call anybody else because they trust me. I mean, I called and The guy, I said I needed somebody just to talk to my customer service people. I thought that Jack would be great. I could have done it, but I know people that major in customer service that would eat my lunch doing that. So I just move them over there. Well, whenever they're going to need somebody to talk about sales, I'm the man, right? So I watch salespeople that are enamored with their presentations in their laptop and can't wait to just flip that open and start putting it on me. And if you haven't done any diagnostics on, and it's a standard canned presentation, I will close your laptop and usher you out of my office. Plain and simple. And you could have the perfect service or product for me, but I'm not allowing you into my world without you really digging in and finding out, is this a good fit? I'm not going to sell to anybody if my product or service isn't what I consider to be the best thing for them.
That is such a good point. The thing that we do most, that's not even proper English. That is such a good point. The one mistake that I think most people make, especially when they come to work with us, is they expect the prospect to read between the lines and connect the dots. They expect the prospect to be able to analyze whatever the heck it is that you're saying, look at within themselves, look within their systems, their processes, their opportunities, whatever it might be, and go, oh, here's how I can apply it. And in most cases, the prospects either, like, they could figure it out, but they don't want to. They're too lazy. They don't have enough time. Or frankly, they don't understand what the hell you're talking about. And so I feel like if you don't take the time to diagnose the challenge or the issue and then tailor it and then present it in such a way as to show how it'll fit right in with their needs, you're expecting the prospect to do too much.
All you just did was validate where I was earlier, which is, if you're a pro at selling, you're spending a fair amount of time doing your homework before the call. Because the more homework you do before the call, the better you're going to be able to simply tie the dots together for the prospect.
Okay, so what are the 2 or 3 things that we should be doing, or what is your approach to doing that homework so we can show up to the calls really not over-prepared? Because I don't know, maybe it's a myth, but I feel like sometimes I could show up over-prepared and then I take the conversation away from the prospect and I make too many assumptions. So how do we go about this?
Well, you just hit on something really well there, and I'll give you the answer to that. But before I do, the percentage of time on a sales call that you, the salesperson, are talking compared to the percentage of time that the prospect is talking, I would prefer 2/3 of the time the prospect talking and 1/3 on the sales. What I find is it's flipped or even worse, right? What we call showing up and throwing up. And so that doesn't work for me. But go to the company's website, go to more than the homepage with a purpose that says, I'm very curious about these half a dozen things in surfing through their website that I just have legitimate questions about. And I just want to have an engaging conversation. Then that's the company. Now I want to go to the individual, to the person. So I'm going to check them out on social media, check them out on LinkedIn, whatever, and see if there's some things that I can find that maybe we even have in common. I mean, if you did your research on me, like the group yesterday in Phoenix, well, they would have known that I do Ironmans and I do marathons and I played the top 100 golf courses in the United States. I mean, I got enough stuff about me that's out there in the universe that you'd have to be a rock to not find something that we enjoy together, right? You're wearing the Spartan shirt, and immediately, as soon as I got on, I'm like, oh, do you do Spartan races?
Can I tell you, I never wear branded clothing on these recordings, and I was going to change into plain black or my sales loop shirt, and I left it on specifically because I saw that you did this stuff.
There we go, right? So what happened? As soon as we got going together, right before we went live, we started engaging in a very human way, which is the strategic advantage in sales. So people do business with people they like. Find a way to have some commonality. And unless somebody is just not playing in any of those worlds, which I'm not sure that they ought to be on your prospect list because they're probably not very good anyway, right? Be selective. Be selective about your marketplace. Too many salespeople calling on too many people that don't deserve to be called on. When I go and I look at the very top producers all around the world in sales, no matter what industry it is, they call on less people and they write more business.
They're cherry picking, right?
Yeah, the key is they call on the right people. I mean, I've had salespeople 100% commission only working for me and my companies that are making 7 figures every year in commissions. And then I look and 90% of their business is from 10 people. And they just focused on the ones that really are worth investing in. And I have one salesperson that she told me, I actually don't sell and haven't sold in over a decade. I just do business with my friends. And I said, well, Cindy, did you all go to high school together? And she started laughing. She said, no, I didn't know any of them until I called on them. But we evolved into, we go on vacations together. We go all over the place and we go to dinners and blah, 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 blah. I hold a golf tournament with the top 10 and give putters away and drivers away and all. And then I watch the other salespeople that are mediocre and they're going after 1,000 accounts. How do you build a relationship with anybody in that business? This is a crazy thing. I'm holding up my phone here because this thing at the end of the day will have over 100 people try to approach me on LinkedIn with a message that says somehow they're going to turn my life into Shangri-La. They said the exact same words to another 500 people this week. Right? Do you really believe that that's going to garner you business?
The amazing thing, though, is if you narrow your focus and you narrow your targets and you spend more time and pour into them, it just eliminates the competition because you're not competing for everyone's attention all the time. You are literally going in and you are creating, I guess, a connection that can't have any competition, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I'll take it to another level, Mark. I have a client in South Florida, and he has salespeople all over the nation, and their goal is to get a desk in the client's offices.
Oh man, I used to do that all the time. Not got a desk, but anytime I had a conversation with someone, I would offer to drive down and meet with them in person simply so I could walk the halls. Because going from the elevator to reception to the meeting room, I would often pass the same people and I would get to know them.
Yeah.
And then suddenly now it's like you're walking into high school and you're like, hey, how's it going? And you're like, you can have so many conversations between reception and the boardroom if you start to know people.
When this client gets a salesperson with a desk, they need in the size of the companies, they need a badge to get into the building. So they wear their badge. And so all of a sudden, the people forget that they're an outside force, that they're just coming by the desk to order some more stuff. And so these guys sit in the desk one day a week, and their top 5 clients, that's where they operate from. And most of the time, they're working on other business with other clients sitting at that desk. Now, the other competitors are trying to get through the gatekeeper and the receptionist up there, and they're going, you might as well just poke your head out of your desk and go, make funny faces at the guy at the receptionist not being able to get in.
Yeah. You know what? You just reminded me when I started my career right out of school, I actually spent almost a year as an embedded sales rep in a hotel. So I worked for an AV company. The AV company had the contract with the hotel. I had a desk. I had a phone. I worked for the AV company, but I spent all day, every day embedded in that hotel, helping the hotel, helping their clients. And I never even saw or even spoke to anyone at head office. It was like I basically worked for Novotel as opposed to working, for this other company.
Why do we forget those things?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So I just had this thought a few weeks ago, back when I started my agency, 2006, and kind of over the next 5-10 years, let's say, I used to sell in this kind of really old school, what I kind of imagine is this like old school European approach. So imagine if you were to go into, you're a little kid and you have a pocket full of change and you go into the local deli or the local corner shop and there's this lovely gentleman or woman there and you pull out your money and you say like, I want to buy this chocolate bar and I want to buy this or that. And they would look at your money and they would see that you kind of don't have enough, but they would say like, let me see what I can do. Let me take care of you. And they might help you out, or they might say, no, you can have this, but you can't have that. But it would be that feeling of like old school mechanics. I feel like used to be this way. You'd come with a problem. They would take you in. They would say, let me see what I can do to send you on your way safely. And I've just been reflecting on the fact that for maybe 10 or 12 years, I think I sold that way. People would come to us with a problem, with a challenge, and I would say, let me see what I can do. And I would look at it and I would send them on their way, giving them the very best that we could with what they had to work with, better than anyone else. And I was really proud of it. And then somewhere in the last 5 or 7 years, I focused on like numbers and results and like all of these hard things, these hard numbers, this hard data, this objective approach. And I lost this old school, like, let me take care of you and send you on your way. And I've been reflecting on this because the old way that I used to do it, frankly, got better results. And I had more fun and everyone liked it. But it felt like it was like cheating, kind of. It didn't feel like it was like following the system and following the numbers and I'm leaving money on the table and all that crap people talk about. Help me understand these kind of maybe two approaches. And is there really any right or wrong way if it works?
My degree is in accounting and my background is a numbers guy. I was once a CFO of a company, and margin's important, profit's important. Can't get profit without revenues, which is sales. That's the drill. And none of it matters to me if I'm not doing right by the customer. And if I do right by the customer, then all of those things are the after effect. It's the wrong positioning to put those on the front. So you might get a transaction or two out of that, but you're not going to build a career. And so I'm pretty well known, Mark, around the world for this sentence. Sports teams are run better than most businesses. And, if I look at John Wooden, now I'm dating myself, but he was the coach at UCLA basketball. And out of 11 seasons, 9 of them, he won the national championship. And he's got prolific books all over the place. And he basically ran every team the same way. And he just said, we're going to work on the basics. We're going to practice more than anybody else out there. And we're going to play by the playbook that we designed for each game. We're going to practice again those plays. And if we practice the fundamentals and show up at each game, the scoreboard will take care of itself. And that's exactly where I come from selling. If I do the homework, build the playbook, practice the playbook, I don't think anybody's going to be disappointed with the top line and the bottom line of the company. Period. End of story. So all I want to do when I'm in the field with a salesperson and I'm their coach is see if they're operating that way. My largest sales force, Mark, was 2,600 salespeople. And when I would visit over 100 locations, I'd have a similar message wherever I went. There aren't 2,600 best ways to sell this stuff. What do you say we figure out the best way, build the system and process, practice system and process, and I bet you we win more than we lose. End of story. And so when I'm out with the very best salespeople, they're canned. And what I mean by canned is not fired. They say the same thing the same way each time they encounter a certain situation. When somebody says, I'm already happy doing business with a competitor, there's no hesitancy. It's full confidence, and they just lock and load, and they're ready to go. Because they've heard it so many times. Why are you going to make up something new each time you hear it? And so they're pros, and it comes across as so professional. And so it's all about preparation. I talked about it earlier with you. Go to the websites, do your homework, have your questions ready before you get to the prospect. Be truly listening and not thinking about what you're going to ask next. And that's all preparation. Now I'm talking about figuring out best practices and putting them into a playbook and practicing the playbook. Look, I've done these virtual sales trainings for 4 hours where people can buy a seat for 4 hours. And a couple of weeks ago, I had 5 salespeople from the same company. I said, take yourself off mute, and I want you to answer this question. Why should I do business with your company? And each guy, here's what their answers were. Experienced, knowledgeable, competitive, wide array of choice, good customer service. So those were the 5 answers. And I'm going, well, wait a second. If I had a competitor of yours in here and I asked them, wouldn't they tell me the same thing? And if you don't know why we should buy from you that's different and better than somebody else, how am I as the prospect supposed to know that? So every salesperson is going to hear that said, or it's going to go unsaid. And after you've left, they're going to say, why should I buy from that individual? Well, on a sales call, figure out how you're better and different than everybody else, and then hit them up with that. That to me is all preparation.
Oh, this is so good. If you'd like to know more about Jack Daly, you can head over to jackdalysales.com. He has a bunch of workshops, digital workshops. There's coaching programs. There's books, as he mentioned. I could just pick your brain all day. I love it so much. But unfortunately, we have to wrap things up. So I want to hit you with this final question I have. What is your number one tip or strategy to help us sell more?
I'm a voracious reader. I'll read probably 100 books this year. And I'm going to give you my favorite book that everybody should take down. Mindset by Carol Dweck. And that puts us either into a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And if you're a fixed, and by the way, we're not born that way. We get to choose, and you can choose at any time, at any age. But here's what I will tell you. You can read all the sales books you want in your life. If you're a fixed mindset person, you ain't going to be successful.
I used to be the mayor of fixed mindset town. Like I ran for governor of it, and I still struggle with it often. Fixed mindset and scarcity mindset are 2 things that I still bump up against.
I was in the mortgage business, Mark, years ago, and I'm watching the mortgage industry right now. And 15 months ago, the interest rates were about 3% on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, and now they're at about 7%. And the salespeople are going, well, I got to go find a new profession because nobody's going to do a loan at 7%. Well, wait a second.
That's not true, though, because I think just last month, because there was a drop in rates, I think there was an uptick in the number of mortgages being written.
Yeah. Because people are like, oh, they're going down again. I did loans at 17.5%. Like, it's just a mindset. All right? Like, hey, whenever you're confronted with a challenge, pandemic. By the way, as a professional speaker, travel hundreds of thousands of miles and speak to large groups of people. The pandemic, I'm in lockdown. Well, most people would say, well, then you're screwed in your business. I built a virtual studio, and I doubled my revenue and profits during the pandemic. And I didn't have to get on an airplane and stay at a hotel. It's a mindset, all right? And so whenever you're confronted with the economy is rough or interest rates, whatever it is, so supply chain issues, how can I make this a win for me? Is there a win here, and where is the route on the win? Because the majority of people are going to close their laptops and go and spend their time at the gym or something because they can't sell. I'm going to use that as my opportunity to go right by the majority of them. And when whatever the catastrophe is over and they come back in, I will be the premier leader. Growth mindset.
Ah, what a good talk. Oh my goodness. What you may not realize is Jack and I actually stayed on the line, and we had an amazing conversation even after the recording. He has so much experience, and I appreciate that he was willing to come on and share it with us. But let's get into our 3-point roundup. Number 1, likability and trust still remains as the number 1 fundamental aspect of sales. Even with all the evolving technology, nothing replaces likability and trust. Number 2, before you pour a ton of time into a ton of different people, spend some time prospecting. Go back to the old school, do some research, learn about people, and make sure you're spending your time on the opportunities that will return to you the best results. And number 3, I think we've seen this shift over the last 10 or 15 years, but certainly sales has moved from feature and benefits based selling to insight and storytelling-based selling. And so taking the time to understand and address your prospects' specific needs and pain points will always be more effective than just trying to run off some kind of generic sales pitch. And so a massive thank you to Jack Daly for joining us. If you want to learn more about Jack, you can find him over on LinkedIn. You could also head over to his website, jackdalysales.com, to find a copy of his book, Hyper Sales Growth. And while you're over there checking him out on LinkedIn and heading over to his website, you can also find me over on LinkedIn. My name is Mark Drager. I have the black and white photo with the blue background. Why not give me a follow? Why not drop me a DM? Let me know what you think of the podcast. And if you have any questions or your own tips, if you want to jump into the conversation with me, I would love that. And one last thing, if you've made it this far into the podcast, you probably should subscribe. And here's why. Every week, we share expert tips and strategies just like what Jack has shared with us today to supercharge your business growth and to boost your sales. With that, I'm Mark Drager. We will wrap up another episode, and I will catch you in the next one.